Coming up, another episode of The Deep Dive, exploring radical ideas. A podcast produced by Bob Rash.
That delivers a logical analysis of objective reality, grounded in rational principles. We will explore relevant facts and radical ideas based on the axiomatic principles of identity, causality, and consciousness, on reason as an absolute, on rational self-interest as a moral guide, and on the ideals of privacy, freedom, and justice.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on, well, a pretty fascinating journey, I think. We're going to connect a piece of 19th century French satire, brilliant, sarcastic stuff, directly to some really intense 21st century debates right here in America.
Yeah, debates about corporate power, high-skilled immigration. It all ties together.
Exactly. And our focus isn't the usual tariffs you hear about, like on steel or farm goods. No, today we're talking about the potential cost of putting a tariff on people, specifically on highly skilled human capital.
And this really gets to the heart of an age-old economic tension, doesn't it? It's that constant push and pull between protectionism, trying to shield domestic industries, and the ideas of free markets.
Free markets meaning competition, efficiency, and ultimately lower cost for everyone.
Right. So our sources today, they really pivot around this incredible piece of historical satire. We're going to unpack how the logic Frederick Bastiat used against tariffs on goods centuries ago is surprisingly relevant today.
When applied to people, to human talent.
Exactly. To human ingenuity.
Okay, so the anchor for all of this is Bastiat's famous Candle Makers Petition. We'll use just how absurd that 1845 piece is to shed light, no pun intended, on modern policy ideas. Ideas we see discussed in articles like a tariff on human capital.
It really shows that economic fallacies, they don't really die. They just find new targets. Maybe it's not candles anymore. Maybe it's coders.
Oh, good point.
So our mission here is to take these different sources, the historical satire, the modern critiques, and really unpack them. We want to show how some recent attempts to restrict skilled foreign workers.
Things like huge fees or just bureaucratic nightmares.
Exactly. How those might inadvertently be repeating the same kind of wasteful, inefficient protectionism that Bastiat just demolished, satirically, nearly 180 years back.
So we're looking beyond the stated goals, the easy answers?
We have to. We need to reveal the unseen costs, the long-term consequences.
Okay, let's unpack this, right? So to really get the modern stuff, we absolutely have to start with the man himself, Frédéric Bastiat. Lived 1801 to 1850.
And he wasn't just some dry economist writing academic papers.
No, he was a philosopher, a communicator, a 19th century French thinker who really dedicated his life, a tragically short life actually, to championing free trade.
And he used satire, brilliant, cutting satire, not just essays, to expose the flaws, the logical gaps in protectionist thinking.
He basically made economic ignorance look ridiculous, which is quite a skill.
And you have to remember the context. France at that time was still grappling with the legacy of mercantilism. Protectionism was everywhere.
Governments were constantly slapping tariffs on imports to protect their buddies, their favored domestic industries.
Which, of course, led to inefficiency, corruption,
Bruh.
the usual problem. So the Candle Makers Petition, which is still taught in Econ 101 classes today.
For good reason.
Absolutely. It was written in 1845, published in his book Economic Sophisms. Bastiat was taking the free trade arguments, building on Adam Smith, but aiming them squarely at the tariffs, strangling the French economy then and there.
And the genius of the petition, I think, is who the petitioners are supposed to be. It's not just one small group.
No, he frames it as the entire French lighting industry. Everybody.
Candle makers, obviously, but also taper makers, lantern manufacturers, street lamp operators.
Plus the whole supply chain. Tallow producers, oil merchants, resin suppliers, alcohol distillers.
Yeah.
Anyone remotely connected to making light.
It's this massive coalition, supposedly.
And their complaint, it's phrased perfectly in that kind of whiny, self-pitying tone that every protectionist argument seems to adopt. They claim they're suffering from.
Wait for it.
Unfair competition of a foreign rival.
And the rival is?
The sun.
The actual sun. A giant ball of gas in the sky.
Yep. Their argument is that this massive celestial competitor is flooding the market with its product light at a price point that they simply cannot compete with.
I mean, the nerve of the sun, right? Offering light for free.
Exactly. They argue, apparently, with a straight face in the petition, that because the sun provides light at a price of 0 all day long, it's fundamentally unfair competition.
Therefore, the government has a duty.
A patriotic duty to take extreme measures to protect them from this devastating celestial force that's depressing their profits.
Okay, so what's the proposed solution? This is the best part.
The requested action is pure gold. They petition the government demanding a law.
A law requiring
the closure of all openings, holes, chinks, and fissures through which the light of the sun is wont to enter houses.
mandated blackouts, shutters closed, curtains drawn, block out the sun entirely.
All to save the domestic lighting industry.
And this is where Bastiat flips it from just satire into a fundamental economic lesson. The candle makers argue, quite logically within their absurd frame, that forcing people inside into darkness
Would naturally lead to a huge increase in the consumption of candles, tapers, oil, everything they sell.
more sales, more jobs in the lighting sector, bigger profits for them. That's the benefit you can see right away.
That's what is seen in Bastiat's famous phrasing, the immediate, visible boost to that specific protected industry. But Bastiat immediately pivots to the cost. What is not seen? Yes, the candle makers and their suppliers would benefit, no doubt.
Sure, their balance sheets look better.
But forcing the entire population to pay for light they could have gotten for free. That's just a colossal waste of resources. It's basically a massive self-inflicted tax on everyone in France.
Yeah, think about it practically. If I suddenly have to spend, say, 100 francs more each year just on candles because my windows are boarded up,
Right?
that's 100 francs I can't spend on something else. Maybe
Right.
better food, clothes for my kids, maybe tools for my own business.
Exactly right. That money is just diverted. It raises the cost of living for absolutely everyone, reduces their overall disposable income, and it actively harms other sectors of the economy, potentially more efficient ones.
So protectionism here doesn't actually create new wealth.
Not at all. It just dictates where existing wealth has to be spent, often inefficiently. The society as a whole is poor. Bastiat showed that protecting the candle industry actually lowers overall wealth. It's a net loss for society.
One sector gains, everyone else loses more.
Precisely. And he lands the punchline with this perfect rhetorical jab.
Right.
He points out the inconsistency.
How so?
He says, look, the government already bans foreign goods like coal, iron, wheat, textiles, especially when their price gets close to 0, because that means they're super competitive.
Right, they block the cheapest stuff the most.
So Bastiat asks, how can you possibly justify not banning the light of the sun, whose price is 0 all day long? If you're going to be consistent in your protectionism, you absolutely have to ban the sun.
It completely skewers the logic.
It does. And what's really powerful is how this idea, what is seen and what is not seen, goes way beyond just tariffs. It became a foundational concept.
It's about looking past the immediate, obvious effect.
To see the hidden ripple effects, the opportunity costs imposed on everyone else.
I didn't realize he was the origin of that. That's huge. Opportunity cost is like Econ 101.
Well, he didn't coin the term opportunity cost.
Yeah.
That came later, about 60 years later, from an Austrian economist, Friedrich von Weiser. But Bastiat absolutely nailed the mechanism. The cost of helping the candle makers isn't just the money spent on candles, it's the value of the next best thing that money could have bought. That's the opportunity cost.
The bread, the shoes, the tools, whatever else people had to give up.
Exactly. So this core economic tool we use every day to make rational decisions, it owes a massive debt to a French satire about blocking out the sun.
And that concept opportunity cost is exactly what we need to keep in mind as we shift from 19th century candles to 21st century tech visas. We have to constantly ask, what's the unseen cost here? Okay, so Bastiat lays out this incredibly clear, logical case against protectionism using satire. But as our sources point out, despite how clear it seems, protectionism is still, well, incredibly popular.
Oh, absolutely. It's a tool governments worldwide still reach for constantly. The basic impulse restricting trade to help domestic groups hasn't gone away. It just maybe changes its shape a bit.
Right. We talk about protectionism generally as government policies limiting international trade, usually claiming it's to boost the domestic economy.
And tariffs, taxes on imports, are the classic example. But it's broader than that now. We see things like import quotas.
Just limiting the number of foreign products allowed in.
Right. Or non-tariff barriers like product standards. Setting specific domestic rules that imported goods might struggle to meet, sometimes legitimately for safety, but sometimes maybe not.
Always to nudge or force consumers toward the domestic option, even if it's more expensive or lower quality.
Precisely. And typically these policies hit physical goods. Steel, cars, washing machines, whatever.
But the really sharp insight in the modern critique, like in that article, A Tariff on Human Capital, is applying Bastiat's exact same logic to, well, to skilled people.
To high-skilled foreign labor. This is where protectionism is evolving. It's about restricting the movement of talent, of the people who embody human capital.
And there's a very specific recent policy proposal that really crystallizes this idea. It's pretty staggering, actually.
You're talking about the proposal to charge companies? What was it, $100,000?
$100,000, not per worker hired, per application for an H-1B visa.
Wow. And the H-1B program, just for clarity, that's the main visa pathway for U.S. companies to hire highly skilled foreign workers.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in tech, engineering, science.
Exactly. It's the pipeline for a lot of top global talent coming into the U.S. workforce, particularly in those STEM fields.
So a $100,000 fee per application. That's not a small hurdle.
Not at all. And here's where it gets really interesting, because we need to look at the stated reason for proposing such a massive fee.
Okay, what's the official justification?
According to the critique in the Wall Street Journal editorial we looked at, the proponents argue it's necessary to stop companies from using supposedly cheap foreign labor to undercut American wages.
The classic protectionist argument. Protect domestic workers from cheap foreign competition.
Exactly. The stated intention is clearly protectionist. Price the foreign workers out, make them too expensive, so companies are forced theoretically to hire Americans instead.
So that $100,000 charge is like the modern version of forcing people to buy expensive candles instead of using free sunlight.
Right. The seen benefit is supposed to be protecting certain American workers.
But, just like Bastiat warned us, if the underlying premise is wrong, if the foreign alternative isn't actually cheaper or harmful, then the whole policy is just
Wasteful economic sophistry, as Bastiat called it.
Exactly. And that's what we need to dig into next. Because the sources suggest the economic logic behind that $100,000 fee just doesn't hold up to scrutiny.
Yeah, that $100,000 figure is just mind-boggling per application. It feels less like a processing fee and more like a penalty, doesn't it?
Well, that's precisely how the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which is, generally conservative and pro-business, framed it. They didn't call it a fee. They called it a de facto tax on hiring skilled foreign workers.
A tax designed to do what?
Designed explicitly to price them out of the market, to make hiring top global talent prohibitively expensive for American companies. It's punitive.
So let's connect that back to Bastiat again. That tax is like forcing companies, or ultimately consumers, to pay way more for something, in this case specialized talent, than the market would normally dictate.
Exactly. Think about that $100,000. Where does it come from? It has to come out of the company's budget somewhere.
Right. Maybe it's less money for R&D, less money for building new facilities. Maybe it means smaller raises for the American workers already there.
Or less investment in training programs for domestic workers. It's just make doing business in the U.S. more expensive, potentially hurting our competitiveness overall. It's that unseen cost hitting again.
Okay, but the justification hinges on this idea that H-1B workers are cheap labor undercutting Americans. Is that actually true?
Well, according to the data presented in the sources we looked at, that premise seems fundamentally flawed. There are actual legal and economic realities that contradict it.
Okay, let's break that down. What stops companies from just hiring cheaper foreign workers?
Two main things. First, and this is crucial, the law requires employers sponsoring an H-1B visa to pay the worker the higher of two figures.
Higher of what?
Either the prevailing wage for that specific job in that specific geographic location as determined by the Department of Labor using survey data.
Okay, so the local market rate.
Right. Or the actual wage the company pays to its other employees with similar experience and qualifications, including U.S. workers. Whichever of those two is higher, that's the minimum they must pay the H-1B worker.
So the law itself has a built-in mechanism to prevent wage undercutting. They can't legally pay less than a comparable American worker would get.
Correct. Unless the company is breaking the law, the cheap labor argument doesn't really work structurally.
And what's the second point? Is there data on actual salaries?
Yes. And this is where it gets even more interesting. An independent analysis by Glassdoor, the job site, looked at salaries on their platform.
And they found.
They found that controlling for things like job title and location, H-1B worker salaries were actually, on average, about 2.8% higher than comparable U.S. salaries.
Wait, higher, not lower.
Higher, by almost 3%.
Okay, that completely demolishes the cheap labor rationale for the $100,000 tax. If they cost more, there's zero financial incentive to hire them just to save money on wages.
It certainly seems to undermine that argument significantly. The sources conclude there's scant evidence that foreign workers are taking U.S. jobs, especially in these high-skills STEM areas.
And they mentioned U.S.-born STEM employment actually grew.
Yeah, by something like 3 million jobs between 2003 and 2024. The issue doesn't seem to be a lack of jobs for qualified Americans. In fact, unemployment rates in fields like computer science are typically very low.
So if it's not about saving money on wages and there are jobs available for Americans with the right skills, why are companies using the H-1B program so heavily?
This points directly to the other major argument our sources make. It's about a skills gap, economic necessity, meaning there simply aren't enough Americans graduating with the specific, often highly specialized technical skills needed to fill these advanced roles, particularly at the graduate level.
Is there data on that?
There's one statistic that's pretty staggering. International students, people here on student visas, often hoping to stay and work currently, make up 71% of all the full-time graduate students enrolled in computer and information sciences programs in the United States.
71%. Wow. So the vast majority of the people getting the most advanced training in critical tech fields in our universities are not U.S. citizens.
That's what the data suggests. So if you put up a massive barrier like a $100,000 fee, you're essentially telling nearly 3/4 of your future high-level tech talent pipeline, maybe don't stick around.
And these aren't just generic skills, right?
Often not. The example given was Tesla. In 2024, they filed 658 visa applications just for manufacturing engineers.
Okay, what's special about that role?
It's described as a really specialized niche blending advanced engineering with the logistics of large-scale, high-tech manufacturing. It's apparently a skill set that just isn't widely taught, even at many top U.S. engineering schools.
So if Tesla can't get those 658 specialized engineers via H-1B because of a huge tax, what happens? They can't just magically find 658 Americans with that exact niche training if they don't exist in sufficient numbers.
Exactly. The likely outcomes are either Tesla pays the exorbitant fee, which slows down their innovation and growth, or
they move those specific jobs and the R&D connected to them somewhere else to a country where they can find or bring in that talent.
that's the risk. The job gets exported, not filled domestically.
Yeah.
The unseen consequence is that restricting the human capital ends up restricting domestic innovation and the growth of related industries.
The candle makers win again, but the overall economy potentially loses.
That's the Bastiat argument in modern terms.
Now, beyond the economics, the Wall Street Journal piece also raised a serious legal or political objection, didn't it, about how this fee was being proposed?
Yes, they argued it was potentially an abuse of executive power. Their point was that Congress never actually authorized a $100,000 charge like this. Fundamentally, they argued, it's a tax, and Congress controls taxation.
So how is the administration trying to justify implementing it?
They attempted to use a provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's a clause that allows the president to restrict the entry of certain groups if they're deemed detrimental to the interests of the U.S., often invoked for national security reasons.
Wait, they were arguing that the entire H-1B program, filled with engineers and scientists, is a national security threat to justify the fee.
That seems to have been the rationale presented. It's definitely a stretch. The editorial board was quite blunt, saying this claim was made without evidence.
So their conclusion was
That the executive was essentially abusing his national security powers to push through an economic policy that likely wouldn't pass Congress on its own merits. They drew a direct parallel to using national security as a pretext for imposing tariffs on goods, calling it similar to willy-nilly tariffs.
That adds a whole other layer. It suggests it's not just about flawed economics, but maybe about using a political maneuver to achieve a protectionist goal, even if the data doesn't support the premise.
It certainly complicates the narrative. If the economic case is weak and the legal justification is questionable, you have to ask what the ultimate impact is on the country's ability to attract and retain the world's best talent.
Okay, so if the policy aims to restrict skilled workers, despite evidence suggesting they aren't undercutting wages but are filling a skills gap, what's the potential unseen cost we're risking? This next part really quantifies that.
It really does. We need to look at who is actually leading America's most valuable, most innovative companies right now.
First, let's set the baseline. What percentage of the U.S. population are immigrants?
Currently, it's about 13.7%, just under 14%. Keep that number in mind.
Okay, 13.7%. Now let's look at their representation at the very top of the U.S. economy, starting with the private, venture-backed companies, the so-called unicorns and decacorns, the next generation of giants.
The results here, based on recent analysis like the one from Crunchbase, are pretty mind-blowing. Of the 4 most valuable private VC-backed companies in the U.S.,
The top 4.
all 4, 100%, have immigrant founders or current immigrant CEOs.
100% from a group that's less than 14% of the population. That's wildly disproportionate.
It is. Let's name them because these are household names or soon will be.
Oh, and?
Number 1, SpaceX. Valuation reportedly north of $100 billion. Founded and led by Elon Musk. We think of him as American, but he's originally from South Africa, went to college in Canada, then came to the U.S.
Okay, number 2.
Stripe, the digital payments infrastructure giant. Valued around $95 billion last check. Co-founded by Patrick and John Collison, brothers from Ireland. Patrick is the CEO.
Number 3.
Instacart, the grocery delivery behemoth. Valuation around $39 billion. Its current CEO, Fidji Simo, is from France. And the founder, Apoorva Mehta, was born in India, lived in Libya and Canada before coming to the U.S. to start the company.
And in the 4th.
Databricks, crucial player in big data and AI infrastructure, valued around $38 billion. Founder and CEO Ali Ghodsi, originally from Iran, moved to Sweden, then came to the U.S. as a visiting scholar.
So SpaceX, Stripe, Instacart, Databricks, the top 4 private tech giants, all led by immigrants.
It strongly suggests that any policy making it harder for highly skilled, ambitious people to come here and build things is potentially cutting off the source of future economic powerhouses. This is the innovation we risk losing. That's the unseen cost made visible.
And it's not just the private market, right? What about the biggest public companies, the established giants?
The story is remarkably similar, though the numbers shift a bit with market fluctuations. Our sources noted that as of recently, 4 out of the 7 most valuable U.S. public companies are also currently led by immigrants.
Okay, who are we talking about there? This list has changed recently with NVIDIA's rise, right?
Exactly. And leading that charge is NVIDIA itself, the company powering the AI revolution with its chips. CEO and co-founder Jensen Huang, born in Taiwan, moved to the U.S. when he was 9.
Incredible. Who else?
Then you have 2 giants whose CEOs are both originally from India. Sundar Pichai at Google, or Alphabet rather, and Satya Nadella at Microsoft.
Okay, that's 3. And the 4th?
Elon Musk again. Tesla. He's the only person leading one of the top private companies, SpaceX, and one of the top public companies.
So NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, Tesla. 4 of the top 7 public companies led by immigrants. Who are the other 3 with U.S.-born CEOs?
That would be Amazon, Apple, and Berkshire Hathaway.
The contrast is just stark. Immigrants are 14% of the population, but hold the CEO spot at 4 out of 7 top public companies and 4 out of 4 top private VC-backed companies.
The numbers really do speak volumes.
Yeah.
You have, on one hand, a policy proposal like the $100,000 H-1B tax, justified by claiming foreign workers undercut wages.
A claim the data doesn't seem to support.
Right. And on the other hand, you have overwhelming empirical evidence that this very demographic skilled immigrants is disproportionately responsible for creating literally trillions of dollars in economic value and leading American innovation on the global stage.
So, connecting back to Bastiat one more time, the seen benefit of the tariff is maybe some theoretical protection for some domestic workers.
While the unseen cost is potentially preventing the next Google, the next NVIDIA, the next SpaceX from ever starting here because the founder couldn't get in or couldn't afford the talent thanks to that tariff on human capital.
And it's not just about potential future taxes like the $100K proposal, is it? The sources mention existing hurdles are already a problem.
Absolutely. Just the sheer complexity and uncertainty of the U.S. visa system, even without massive new fees, is already a significant barrier. It makes it really hard for potential founders to even get here and stay here legally.
And that's pushing talent elsewhere.
It contributes. We're seeing other countries actively trying to recruit global talent, building their own startup hubs. When we make it harder or more expensive to come here, we inadvertently encourage the brain drain away from the U.S.
So adding a huge tax on top of existing complexity.
It just accelerates the potential outsourcing of future innovation. We'd essentially be implementing policies that actively discourage the world's best and brightest from choosing the U.S. as the place to build their dreams and our future economy.
It feels like we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot, economically speaking, protecting a group that might not need it at the cost of future growth. #tag outro. So we've traced this line from Frédéric Bastiat's biting 1845 satire about candle makers wanting to block the sun, all the way to a very real, very modern debate about putting a $100,000 tax on visas for skilled workers.
And the thread connecting them, the core lesson, seems remarkably consistent, doesn't it?
It really does. Those fundamental economic principles about tariffs, about hidden costs, about the dangers of protectionism, they seem to apply just as much to human ingenuity and talent as they do to physical goods like coal or candles.
Bastiat's central point. The reason the Candle Makers Petition is still so relevant is that it forces us to confront the true cost, the often hidden economic cost, of protectionism.
He argued that forcing people to buy expensive domestic products when better or cheaper foreign options exist. Yeah, it helps the inefficient domestic producer survive.
But it costs everyone else. It costs the consumers directly, and it costs the overall economy because that money, that capital, could have been used more productively elsewhere.
In an industry where we do have a real competitive advantage.
Precisely. His petition forces us to look beyond the narrow interests of the protected group, whether it's 19th century candle makers or maybe certain 21st century labor groups, and see the broader impact, the opportunity costs for society as a whole.
We have to look past what is seen, the jobs potentially saved in one specific area.
To what is not seen, the innovation stifled, the companies not started, the wealth not created across the entire economy because we chose inefficiency.
So what does this all mean? It means when we evaluate policies like a massive H-1B fee, we can't just focus on the immediate visible stuff, the fee revenue or the supposed protection for some workers.
We absolutely have to analyze the long-term systemic costs. And if, as the data strongly suggests, future economic growth and competitiveness rely heavily on attracting and retaining top global talent.
The kind of talent represented by those immigrant CEOs and founders leading so many top companies.
Then policies designed to restrict that talent, to put a tariff on that human capital, well, they risk seriously handicapping the U.S. economy in the global race. We'd be deliberately sacrificing a key source of our own competitive advantage.
So the ultimate price of this kind of protectionism isn't just, say, slightly higher tech salaries. It's potentially much, much bigger.
It's the crushing opportunity cost of future innovation. It's the next Google, the next NVIDIA, the next breakthrough technology that maybe doesn't happen here because the key people were kept out or discouraged.
That loss, the uncreated value, the unseen potential, that's the real tariff.
So the final question we want to leave you with, thinking back to Bastiat, is this. What is the true long-term price a nation pays when it erects barriers, not just to goods, but to the very human capital that drives its future prosperity and innovation? What's the cost of shutting out the sun, even partially?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive, exploring radical ideas, grounded in reality, driven by reason, built on self-esteem, rational self-interest, and laissez-faire capitalism, produced by Bob Rash.
We'll be back next week. Until then, stay curious, stay free.
The Deep Dive by Bob Rash.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.